and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. We're here for an episode we had last year, and we're doing it again this year, as this year we once again rank our quarterbacks in the NFL from 32 to 1. And returning is a guest we had last year for the same episode. Back with us is Sam Moores. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. It's always good to do a ranking because it's going to stir a lot of opinions from people, and it's going to cause a lot of buzz. So I mean everyone thinks differently of the quarterbacks, especially towards the middle of it, because anyone could be anywhere. So I'm interested to see just how different my ranking is to yours, mate.
Yeah, definitely. And I have also got the rankings we did last year on me, so we will compare those at the end to see who's on where. I mean, certainly some of my looking at my one from last year and this year as well. There are certainly some quarterbacks that have gone have gone from one end to the other either way. So it's going to be interesting to see what you have this year, and we may as well start now. So we'll go from sort of last to first. We'll build up to number one spot. So Sam, for you, who is number 32?
My number 32 is Sam Howell. I think he'll start in Washington. He played one game at the end of last year against Dallas, and obviously was announced as a starter for this year afterwards, which I think was really weird doing that really early. I think he's a similar QB to Baker Mayfield. He's got a stronger arm than many, but can he be accurate? He only averaged 57.9% completion against Dallas, but obviously rookie last year. We've barely seen him, and Washington are one of those teams that are tanking ready for Caleb Williams and Drake May in a year's time. But I think we've never seen him, and he wasn't exactly highly sought after in the draft either. So I think I'll go for Sam Howell, number 32.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad shout. I mean, what do you think about him? Because he's getting his chance now, but I saw an interview with Ron Rivera recently where he's talking about how he's not guaranteed to be the starter come the end of the season, and obviously they brought in Jacoby Brissett. You
Yes.
mentioned there getting Caleb Williams. I do think Arizona are probably going to get that either through their own poor record or maybe Houston's poor record with that trade. But I think certainly they'll be in for callback. I think next year if somehow doesn't deliver straight away. And I how long do you see him lasting? Do you see him being there the whole year, or do you see maybe at some point this year Jacoby coming in and replacing him?
I mean, it depends how committed they are. If Ron Rivera's job, depends on it, then I expect he probably will put in Jacoby Brissett at some point, just because we've seen he can win a game for you. If everything's there, and he's not bad by any stand. He's a slightly worse Andy Dalton. He's just sort of average quarterback who, I mean, he's not gonna command anything. He's not going to make anything happen for you, but he's a steady pair of hands to have in an offense. Especially, that offense has got quite a lot of talent as well. To be honest with you, the receiving core it's quite underrated. So, yeah, if Ron Rivera's job is on the line, I can see Jacoby Brissett coming in late in the year. I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Right, for my number 32. Now, this one is going to be a shocker. Now, I've got stats to back this up, and I do actually believe what I'm saying here. Number 32 for me is Deshaun Watson.
Wow.
Now, I've got reasons for this. Firstly, he's the sixth highest paid quarterback in the league to the average salary per year. And in total, his stats last year, albeit smaller sample size, still had 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, which is pretty bad. And to further up my argument here about why Deshaun Watson is the worst starting quarterback in the league, you pay all that money guaranteed, and what do you get? Not a great end product. And looking at, I did some math earlier on today, so I looked at every quarterback who I ruled out people like Jordan Love, Sam Howell, Ridder, Stroud, Young, and Richardson. But every quarterback who started at least 5 games in the NFL career in this list I've got, I basically divided their average salary per year by touchdowns. And Deshaun Watson's top that list for most money paid per touchdown. So Deshaun Watson has an average salary of £46 million per year. But looking at this, he is costing the Cleveland Browns $6.5 million per touchdown. Stafford number two was 4 million. Kyler Murray third was 3 million, and it's just way above everyone else. And to make it, this shows how good Mahomes is. He is 11th in this list, so he is costing the Chiefs only. Oh no, he's 16th in this list. He's only costing them just over $1 million per touchdown. I mean, looking at the
Wow.
bottom, obviously it's the likes of Burrow, Herbert, Justin Fields, Tua, Trevor Lawrence. They're all in rookie deals, but Deshaun Watson is on a mega deal, and you're basically paying all that money despite all of the allegations that are alongside him. He brings it in. Everyone's going to hate him. He's going to bring a. No one likes the Browns in. The teams have moved off from the Browns because they brought in Deshaun Watson, expecting him to become the great quarterback he is. They give him multiple first-round picks, and so far they've got nothing. And I'm fully expecting I may get proved wrong this year. He may well bounce back, but he may not. And right now they're paying all this money and risking they have risked the franchise's reputation with this move, and he's not performing. So that's why, for that reason alone, he is my worst quarterback in the league. And I may as well carry on from there because I've kept the rookie quarterbacks because we've not seen him play yet. So I've got Richardson as my 31. I've got CJ Stroud 30. No, sorry, Bryce Young 30 and CJ Stroud 29, purely because I like Stroud more than Young. But yeah, I'm going to rule them out because we've not really seen them on the field yet. But for you, Sam, who's 31?
My number 31 is Desmond Ridder, and I've got all the rookies after him. His first two starts last year went great, but I mean, he looked fairly accurate in the third and fourth games, actually. Admittedly, he wasn't asked to really do much because their run game with Arthur Smith is so good that it's basically the most QB friendly system you can have. We've seen Ryan Tannehill, succeed in that system when he was at Tennessee because you just hand it off to the running back basically. And that's not going to change this year because obviously they drafted Bijan Robinson, so if anything, they're going to run the ball more. But for me, yeah, he obviously has more experience than Sam Howell, so I put him at number 31. But the only thing that does worry me for him is he had to wait until his fourth and final start to throw his only two touchdowns. He didn't throw any picks, but obviously first three games without a TD is quite worrying. And then I've got the three rookie QBs. So I've got Anthony Richardson at 30. Because I think he will start for the Colts, even though I wouldn't do that because he's very raw through 50% accuracy in college, which is just abysmal. Admittedly, don't get me wrong, he's got all the tools and everything, but I think it will take time for him to make a mark on the league. And then I've got Bryce Young ahead of CJ Stroud because I love a small, accurate quarterback, as you'll see by this list as the night goes on. Yeah, Bryce Young's my QB1 in the class. If he can translate to the NFL, with his build, obviously that he is quite small. He's in a position to succeed right away because that Panthers roster might be the best in the NFC South anyway. At the moment in time, it's that division's there for the taking. I can't see the Falcons winning it, but the Saints, the Panthers, and I mean maybe the Bucks are, but probably between the Saints and the Panthers and me. But yeah, it's opportunity for Bryce Young to be in the playoffs right away, and that's great experience for him actually, as provided he doesn't get hurt or anything like that. But I have him just above CJ Stroud. But I really like CJ Stroud, and again, I can see Houston getting 6-7 wins this year because that team is on the upwards direction. So yeah, that's 30-28.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I actually am not a fan of many. I'm not really a fan of any of the quarterbacks that are taken in the first. I like Stroud the most out of the three, but I don't really. I'm not massively blown over like I was with the likes of Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, all them. I mean, I will say actually I do quite like Stetson Bennett.
Really?
There's questions of whether he's going to be to have the size and all that, but he's been in back-to-back national championships, and just basically what I'm seeing. I'm not saying Benny Minis can be anywhere near Tom Brady, but Tom Brady was a very similar thing. No one viewed him as highly because of his size, and he played in Michigan where he won games. I think Stetson Bennett has won games. I think we could see him, I think, within the next 2 or 3 years make a start because of Stafford getting older now. He is already, I believe, 25, so I don't think he'll.
Yeah, he's quite an old QB.
Yeah, it's like what's his name, Hendon Hooker as well. But I think that he is a guy that I think certainly for maybe more like a Steve Young sort of career in terms of time next, in terms of amazing career, but not too long. But I think he's got potential because he's shown it in, albeit the Georgia's got a hell of a team and you're playing in college, but I wouldn't rule out Stetson Bennett for a potential good few years in the NFL. So moving on to 27. It's 28. Sorry. So my 28 is Sam Howell. Again, small sample size. I don't think I've seen enough really yet. I think he's going into a terrible situation regarding coaching. Ron Rivera is under pressure, on probably the biggest coach on the hot seat right now, maybe apart from Brandon Staley. But it's I think he's got good receivers, and I think maybe he'll get more reps than my next guy, who Sam's already alluded to. But I certainly think that I think that he's got potential, but I've not really seen it yet. So yeah, Sam Howell for me is at 28. For you, Sam, who is at 27?
My 27 is Jordan Love. Again, it's kind of difficult to pick a place for him because he's hardly played at all. But I mean, you'd like to assume that he's better than any of the rookies this year. Ben, when he's been in the league for what 3 4 years now, his game time has come around, due to such unique circumstances like Rodgers getting COVID and things like that. So it's just you've not really seen him at all. I really liked him out of college actually in 2020. He was my was it fourth QB, but I liked all four of those guys that year in 2020. And he did actually look all right when he had the when he came in against Philly, not in snow. But yeah, I think he's bound to be higher on the list next year than he is this year. But because we've not seen him compared to the 26 other QBs, I think I have to put Jordan Love in 27.
Yeah, I actually do like what I saw from that in that Philly game. You got to think if he does succeed, you got to think look at that 2020 class, just how good that is. You've
Yeah,
had obviously Burrow to a lot, Herbert. You had Jaden Hurts. You've got Jordan Love if he succeeds. It's a brilliant. It could prove to be. Everyone looks back at the was it 84 draft class with Marino, Jim Kelly, John Elway, and all that, and I think that we could well see if Tua stays healthy and has a good career. With Burrow, for me, is you'll see where he's later on, but he's could be. I personally think the next Tom Brady. All these quarterbacks, Justin Herbert as well is a good player in a bad team or bad system, I should say, bad coaching. And I think this draft class of quarterbacks. Even look at receivers. Look at Justin Jefferson, not Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson as well. It's could prove to be a very, very good draft class and one that people look back on the years gone
yeah.
by.
There's loads of hits, and then there's also loads of busts as well.
Yeah,
It's like that draft class, many of them are out of the league already. In that first round, especially, it's either you got an all pro player or you're out of the league, and it's
yeah,
it's, it's one or the other from that first round.
yeah. They're either busts, success, or they're in prison. It's one of
Yeah,
those three, and most of them belong to the Raiders.
yeah.
We probably shouldn't laugh about that too much.
No.
um,
Go on.
Yeah, my 27 is Desmond Ridder. And I will say now, I got Jordan Love 26 for the exact reason Sam has small sample size, but he has had the most out of the three. And I've actually liked what I've seen. I think actually this year, I think he actually could be quite good. I don't think they're playoff team just yet. I think there'll be a time for Love to get adjusted to being a starter. But I think Rodgers had the same thing. He didn't make the playoffs, only got 6 wins in his first year. And I think that Love I think he will be good. I don't think he'll be, I don't think he'll be the same level as. I don't think they'll have a third Hall of Famer. They won't go from Favre, Rodgers to Love and have three Hall of Famers, but I think he'll certainly have a solid career. And I think maybe it'll be like a Cousins or maybe like a Jared Goff, but rather than John Elway or a Joe Burrow. For you, Sam, who is 26?
I've got Kenny Pickett. He had the up and down rookie year, missing time with multiple concussions and things like that as well. 6 of his 9 interceptions last year came in 2 of his 13 games. So he had both 3 interception games, and then only 3 interceptions in the remaining 11 games. So throughout the year he did learn to keep hold of the football more. He grew like astronomically actually throughout the year. Like I actually really like what I was seeing towards the end. He looked more comfortable than I thought he would do as well. And his average depth of target it was much higher in the final 2 games against Baltimore and Cleveland than it was the rest of the year. So obviously by the end of the year he was he felt more confident to push the ball downfield more. And obviously, that's. I mean, if you're Pittsburgh, I'm sure you're quite encouraged by what you saw in those last 2 games of the season.
Yeah, I mean, for that reason alone, I've got him a lot higher. I really like what I've seen from Kenny Pickett. I think he's only quarterback I've really liked the last 2 drafts. I didn't really like Malik Willis. Didn't really like many of the quarterbacks this year. Really, Stroud maybe the only one, and Stetson Bennett. But it's for me, Pickett. I think at a slow start. I think that a lot of fans who maybe were. I think they're so used to Ben Roethlisberger. I think they've
Yeah.
forgotten that they need time to adapt. I mean, when I went to the Steelers game last year, there was a lot of people unhappy with Pickett, but I think overall you can't be too dissatisfied. He only played half the games, and I liked what I see. I mean, looking at his stats from that year alone, he had 2,404 yards, 7 touchdowns, 9 picks. So yeah, it's not the best stat line, but I think there's potential there for me, and that's why I've got him a lot higher than some players I got on my list who are very, very much more experienced than Kenny Pickett in my list. Um, yeah, 25. Speaking of which, Baker Mayfield is my 25th. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers new quarterback, the replacement for Tom Brady. Had struggles in Carolina. 6 picks, 6 touchdowns. 1,303 yards. But then came to the Rams, 850 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. So for me, what I like from Baker is that he came into that game against the Raiders with pretty much he'd been out. I want to say a day, maybe just over a day. He'd been there.
Yeah, just signed.
Yeah, and he came in, learned the playbook so quickly. And I've been a backer of Baker Mayfield. I like Baker a lot, and I think that whilst he divides people, I think that I like his sort of his swagger, and I like all that about him, which I know can annoy people and run him up the wrong way. But for me, I think Baker has been in. He's had I think like 5 coordinators in 3 years or something like that. He had
Mm,
so many coordinators in and different head coaches. In time with Cleveland, and then he went to Carolina where Frank Reich got not Frank Reich. Steve Wilkes. No, Steve Wilkes came in to replace. His name's completely passed me by now. The old Panthers head coach, Matt Rule. Matt Rule. We had
mm,
Matt Rule and Steve Wilkes. Yeah, Sean McVay, and Sean McVay is by far the best coach he's ever had. And look
yeah.
what he did. So I think that coming into the Buccaneers side, I do question whether Todd Bowles will be there. Like, I think Todd Bowles, for me, if we're doing worse head coaches in the league, he for me is number 32. So
Wow.
I do fear from that way. But I think that if they replace him with a good head coach, I think we'll see the best of Baker. I think that's all he needs. He just needs a good coach because so far he hasn't had that. So I love to put him higher up, but right now you can't really put him anywhere but this for me. But for you, Sam, who's your 25th?
I agree with you for Baker as well. I think I've got him. I've got a few more to go before I go to Baker. My number 25 is Mac Jones. It's a difficult one because I'm not really a fan anyway. But obviously last year he was never going to succeed in that offense with Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, anyway. So I'm sort of going back to his rookie year here. For me, his pocket presence is really poor. He's a statue in the pocket. He just stands there, and he's been in the bottom half in pressure to sack ratio for both years of his career. And again, like New England haven't really had like an awful offensive line, compared to some in those 2 years, and yeah, he gets sacked quite a lot. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's okay. It's just I'd probably say there are 20 plus quarterbacks better in the league than him, and they've all got something special. Like they've got either legs, or they've got a strong arm, or they can avoid getting sacked. When Matt Jones just he's just so average that for me it just combines into something that just doesn't really work for me. And I mean, New England aren't really sure on him really either. We saw the whole Bailey Zappi thing last year, and you can tell Bill Belichick is not really sure he's the guy. So yeah, if for me, I go Matt Jones, and I think a lot of people like him more than I do. But for me, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, see, I'm in that camp of liking him. I mean, I
Yeah,
think this year we'll see the true Mac Jones because what we saw rookie year was so different to his sophomore year, and I think the main difference was Matt Patricia. And I think that Bill O'Brien, you can point to his decision to trade John Hopkins, his collapse as Houston head coach, but I'm sure as a coordinator he'll do a much better job. And I think he was the coordinator before getting the job at Houston. So I
yeah.
think if Bill O'Brien can be even half, no, even even a little bit. Sorry, what am I talking about? What's that?
If he can pull even half better than Matt Patricia, and
Yeah, I think I was trying to think of there's like a saying, isn't there? But like,
yeah, yeah,
I think basically, yeah. So I think that you get Bill O'Brien in, and for me, I think it's a much better situation from coaching. But same time, Belichick wants to, he wants to win now. He wants to get those wins to get the record, and he's not going to stand around like we saw last year if he does perform badly. So he's got to be careful because a second year in a row where you get benched is not good for your long-term career. So Mac Jones has to sort out quickly, but at the same time, I do think we'll see the rookie Mac Jones more than the sophomore Mac Jones this year. But whether it's good enough, I don't know. I mean, he's higher in my list, but he's not much higher. Back to you, Sam, for your 24.
My 24 is Ryan Tannehill. It's his last year as a starter, I think. I think the time has come for him to move on, especially with Tennessee, drafting quarterbacks in the last two drafts. Um, if the pieces are around him, I think he can succeed, as a starter. But I mean, the Titans are rebuilding now. Derrick Henry is going to be gone within the next 18 months for sure. Um, and the AFC has so many QBs as well that Ryan Tannehill would probably be like bottom five, bottom three QBs in the AFC now, which when it wasn't like that 2 years ago. But it's because every QB is coming into the AFC that now you need a quarterback to win in that conference. A lot more than you did when the Titans got to the championship game. Because now in every division you've got probably three quarterbacks who are all playoff caliber now, and for me, he just he the Titans won't win because of him. They'll win because of Derrick Henry. They'll win because of their defense, and what's his name, Mike Vrabel, like because he's such a good coach. For me, I mean, the thing that for me that really again same with Matt Jones, right, that sums up Ryan Tannehill is he cannot feel pressure for his life. He'll just stand there and next thing you know he'll be sacked. And especially for someone who's a former receiver, you think he'd be able to maybe sniff out someone coming in towards him and get out of a sack, or get out of a closing pocket, but he just can't do that. We saw that for years in Miami. And yeah, I think now I think it's time is coming to an end as a starter.
Yeah, we actually have our first one where it's the same person, the same position.
Mm.
I've also got Ryan Tannehill as my number 24. And yeah, I was one of those ones that were drumming the banging the drum hard for him to get traded away from Miami. I was definitely not a fan when he was there. I loved his resurgence when he first came, when he come back player of the year. But you're completely right, and I not even thought about this, about the lack of quarterbacks there were in the AFC compared to now. I mean, I've just brought up the playoffs from that when they had the run to the AFC Championship game. Obviously, you had Mahomes, you had Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, but it was a young Josh Allen, and it was a in fact, they had Tom Brady as well, so maybe that point is bad. But even so, like
Yeah,
you had, yeah, it's not. I think now you've pretty much like if my playoff predictions were to be at this stage, and even last year, look at AFC, it was Tua, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, albeit he didn't start, but these kind of teams were involved. I know you got Burrow and you got Trevor Lawrence, and there's a lot of callbacks in the AFC, and I think that if they were in the NFC, I still back the Titans to make it.
I
Um,
agree.
and I think that uh, if they have like if Traylon Burks become the guy that I certainly thought he was going to be when he first got drafted, I think that could ease the pressure. We saw that when they had AJ Brown with there, he'd had some success. But I think now with both Malik, I think Malik Willis won't get played. But got Will Levis coming in, they've drafted him, seemingly his replacement. I do think that there'll be a lot of pressure on Tannehill, and I think that I think it's interesting to see. I think Mike Vrabel will obviously he's a winner. I think he's one of the best coaches just in a really bad team. So he really has to perform now. It really is time for him to, I think, but I do think his time's up. I do still think he can get a starting job somewhere. Now I can't think maybe Washington maybe next year if they don't get the Caleb
Mm.
Williams or Michael May or maybe one of them maybe stays in college next year or if they miss out on their quarterback next year I can see potentially going for Tannehill or someone like that. But to be honest, yeah, I don't think he's got long left in him. Speaking of which, not long left. 23rd, my pick is Jimmy Garoppolo of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, at the time of recording, he is a Raiders quarterback. Not talk that he won't be with all his injury problems. And yeah, he's another one. I think that as good as he was in 49ers, I think he was in a good coaching situation. I think if he was in the same situation for a different team, he would not have done as well as he did or been as steady as he was. I think a lot of it to me is down to Shanahan's coaching more than him. And I do think now, for me, yeah, I think with Daniels could be worse than who did I say the worst coach was?
Todd Bowles.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. It's like tomato, tomato. But it's yeah. I think you go from Shanahan to McDaniel's. It's like going from a Mercedes to a Vauxhall Corsa. It's not what you want if you want to have some sort of resurgence in your career. And I do fear like my brother's a Raiders fan, and I don't think he's happy at all about the decision to get Garoppolo, and it's I don't think it's going to work out. And I think he'll be a good mentor. So if they got a quarterback in next year's draft, for example, I think he'd be a great mentor. Otherwise, I just don't think it's going to work out, and I think that's half down to his injury problems, but also down to McDaniel's being a terrible, terrible head coach and a terrible person, for that matter. Sam, over to you for your 23rd.
My number 23 is Baker Mayfield. Um, Again, he's probably a lot higher for me than on anyone else's list, but I'm a big Baker fan. I have been since the moment he was drafted. I was pounding the table for Miami to go for him in the weeks before the draft until, a couple of days before where it's like, oh, I might get number one overall now. Because that, it wasn't the case about 4 days before. There's talk, might even thought about 11, 10 or 11, which the Dolphins are picking that year. That being said, his pocket presence isn't great. No, sorry, it hasn't been great the last couple of years. The first 2 years in Cleveland, he was top 15 QB. People forget how good he was the first couple of years in Cleveland, especially with Freddie Kitchens and that mess that happened. And but for me, Baker obviously not had the greatest situations the last couple of years. We had the Odell Beckham, Freddie Kitchens team, then that was just a disaster. And since then, it's basically been a bit of a downward slope for him. But again, I was really encouraged by what I saw in that Thursday night game for the Rams because he just came in and won, and he won that game. Like it was him that the boost, him and Ben Skoranek just to connecting out. One day after signing, you're just like, well, what's going on here? But no, it just shows that he has got the ability to do that. Again, last year, in the round, in LA, he didn't actually have another great offensive line, so he did get sacked a lot. So again, he if he can just learn his feet as a quarterback, I think Baker can succeed in this league to an extent. I just think he needs to actually be coached properly. I don't think Tampa Bay is the best place for that, but I like him as a quarterback, and I can see him getting another job somewhere. I don't think this is the end of Baker Mayfield because I think he's too talented to not have another job in the NFL.
Yeah, I think also he's not going to go quietly. Is he? He's going to make himself heard, and I think that
Yeah.
even if he hasn't been someone in just for like a few weeks, he may do that and then get the job from then. But I think Baker certainly got a few years left for me. May as well wrap off my next two because we've already mentioned these players. 22, I've got Mac Jones, and 21, I've got Kenny Pickett. For you, Sam, who's 22?
My number 22 is Geno Smith. The
Ooh,
first offer last year, he was a legitimate top 5, top 10 quarterback. He fell away a bit after the Munich game against the Bucks, but was still a very good QB out of nowhere. I just think that any of the QBs ahead of him could do the same job that he's done. Like, I don't think Geno Smith is anything special. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, who's my next person, could do the exact same job for him. We've seen him do it, for San Francisco. He came into a team that's got a decent receiving core, and I mean, the offensive line wasn't great, but they found two starters in the draft for the offensive line last year, and that Seahawks team is now a very good roster with two more elite players coming, highly thought of players coming into that team this year. I I just think Gino, yeah, he's anyone could have done that of my next 21 QBs. One stat I do think is interesting though is him and Josh Allen have almost identical stats in quite a lot of categories. When I was looking last night, which is really weird. Like, so they both were in the top three of big time throws, but also turnover worthy plays. So they both basically threw the heck out of the football, the good and the bad. They had the exact same amount of yards as well. And Josh Allen had 7.6 yards per attempt, and Gino had 7.5 yards per attempt. So their numbers are quite similar when you think about it. But that being said, obviously Josh Allen adds a lot more than Geno Smith does to his offense.
yeah.
And then 21 is Jimmy, which obviously we've mentioned before.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting with Gino because uh, we see so many quarterbacks. Jimmy's actually was guilty of this when he first joined the 49ers. You have this great few games, and then people expect you to do the same next year. And I think a lot of times as we see with Geno Smith, as you're saying about, you see once people get tape on you, the production drops massively, and I think that there's a danger of Geno Smith being maybe a one season wonder, like we saw with like the Nick Foles, and I think there's potential that this could happen with Geno Smith. I've got him a lot higher than what you have him, but I do
Wow.
think that I think that's mainly through coaching more than anything else. But I do think it's really interesting how he do next year because the Seahawks, they missed a chance. They had fifth overall pick, was additionally really got a great pick in Witherspoon, but that was their chance to get a good quarterback, and I don't think they're going to get the same opportunity now from being so good to get a good quarterback. So it's interesting how they do. I mean, yeah, I think he'll be absolutely fine. Maybe he won't get the same media level as he will this year. Maybe he'll have a bit of a downturn, but I still think he's proved to be very good, and I think that hopefully he can make the most of his chance this year. And I've always got a soft spot for the Seahawks, and I'm hoping he
Mm.
can succeed. But at the same time, there's always that question, and there's more that came from with other quarterbacks I've got in this list as well, with that same sort of thinking. But speaking of which, we are going to head to a quick break. We are now into our top 20, so when we come back, we're going to run through 20 to 1. See you guys in a bit.